In the name of the one who loves the beloved and love itself. Amen. I was ordained at the age of 26 in St. Paul's Cathedral in London. And then for my late 20s, I served as the curate of Hampstead Parish Church, a large liberal parish in North London that kind of fancied itself as a kind of cathedral. I learned lots of the things that I'm experiencing here again in cathedral life there, and I loved it. They had a drama group. The drama group became quite accomplished, so much so they used to do a tour of southern France in the summer. They would go and they would set up their sets in the middle of town squares across parts of the south of France, and it was a great fun jaunt. They would take Shakespeare and perform it in English to the French, and people actually did quite enjoy it. During my tenure at Hampstead Parish Church, I was asked one year to go and be the chaplain to the tour of the south of France with the drama group. They didn't really want a chaplain. They wanted someone to drive the van who had a license that could do that, because the person who was directing hadn't got their driving license yet. And so I went, picked up a truck, took all of their sets and equipment to the south of France, drove it down, and I made a deal with the director and some of the other members of the cast saying, I'll do this so long as I don't wind up driving back all on my own. And they said, sure, that'll be fine. We'll work that out. So I got there, and we were having an extraordinary time with these performances. But gradually, as the week went on, one person, then another person would say, well, actually, I made some plans to go to Germany after this. Actually, I made some plans to go and do some wine tasting after this. I made some plans to do this other thing. And I wound up being on my own on the trip back entirely. So I was driving a truck all the way from the south of France up to the English Channel to get on a ferry, drive it across to England, and then back up to London in order to drop all the equipment off and then take the van back because it had been rented. And this was not what I had planned. This was not what I wanted. I wanted some company for conversation on the way, but it was what I had, and I decided to embrace it. I don't know if you want to have a look at a map of France, from the south of France up to the English Channel, but I did. I looked at that map and I thought, there's some things on the way that I'd like to see. Most important amongst them is Chartres Cathedral. I decided to route myself past Chartres so that I could go and walk the Labyrinth and then make my way from Chartres to the Channel. And I planned out my days so that it would work and I could get there. Going to be a bit tight at the end, but I could make it. And that's what I set about to do. I wanted to go and see the Labyrinth at Chartres because I had traveled before I was ordained to San Francisco, and I'd walked the Labyrinth at Grace Cathedral, I think in the late 1990s, and I really wanted to go and see the original. So I set out on my several-day-long drive with various stops on the way, and I got to Chartres. And the Labyrinth was covered with chairs, so I couldn't walk it. They had a big event going on, and there was no way that you could get to the Labyrinth. I could look at it, but I couldn't enter in. So slightly crestfallen, I got up and left, made my way to the Channel, and got back to England. So the destination wasn't quite what I had in mind. But you know what? I look back at that experience, and that's not what I remember. It's what I've told you, but it's not what I remember. The thing that I remember was the last 3 hours of driving into Chartres. There's a big plain just before you get there. It was a blazingly hot day. I opened the windows. I wound up taking my shirt off. I was hot. I put Madonna on a CD into the CD thing and turned it up really loud and wound up singing along at the top of my lungs because nobody else was there as I drove across the summer plains of France towards Chartres. And then because it was a plain, and because the cathedral was tall, it started rising across the horizon, almost like it was sailing towards me, like a ship. That's the memory I have. Seeing Madonna at the top of my lungs driving a truck across southern France up towards Chartres, and then seeing this cathedral kind of sailing towards me. The journey was the thing that I enjoyed the most. The destination was nothing like I expected. But I look back and I realize that somehow I connected to some deep sense of joy on that journey. I wonder what the journey from the Far East to Jerusalem was like for the Magi. We call them Caspar, Melchior, and Balthazar. We think they came from Persia, from Arabia, and from India, but most of that's legend. We know they traveled a long way. We know that they saw a star rising that inspired their journey. We know that they brought gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. The reason we think there were 3 of them was because there were 3 gifts, and we think each of the Magi brought 1 gift each, although the text doesn't actually say that. It could have been 2 Magi with 3 gifts, or 5 Magi, we're not sure. But legend has developed this idea of the 3 Magi and their gifts and their long journey. I wonder what they talked about on the way. I wonder what that journey was like. I wonder, as Caspar coming from India, bringing myrrh perhaps, joined in this conversation with Balthazar and Melchior, I wonder what they said. What do you think this king's going to be like? He has a star. That's not normal. That's extraordinary. We rule in our own parts of the world, but what's this rule going to be like? What did you bring, Melchior? I bought gold. He's going to need some bling. It's like grand. He's a king. It's going to be impressive. I have to bring something really, really fitting for a king. I bought gold. What did you bring, Balthazar? I can't say that one. I can't say that one, Kathy. Balthazar. What did you bring, Balthazar? Why, I didn't bring gold. I think you've missed the point. He has a star rising that is announcing his coming. This is more of a spiritual thing. I bought frankincense. He's going to need incense. He's going to be in a temple. It's not just going to be about power and wealth. He's going to want to pray. Oh, okay. What did you bring, Caspar? I brought myrrh. Caspar, that's the weirdest gift imaginable to bring to a new king. What are you thinking? Well, I don't know. I just was assuming that because he's been announced by the heavens, that he's going to come and change the world. And changing the world doesn't come easy. Changing the world can be full of pain and difficulty. I think there's going to be some grief in this king's life. So I bought myrrh. And as they journeyed and as they talked, I wonder if each of them reflected on the gift they brought and reflected on their perspective on what this new king would be like. As Ken and Kathy reminded us, they took possibly 2 years to get there. What kinds of conversations did they have in the inns on their way at night? What kind of conversations did they have on camelback as they traveled side by side? Did they pitch tents from time to time in the wilderness? Did they have long stretches to ponder and wonder? I wonder if they reassessed some of their priorities. I wonder if the different gifts each of them brought challenged them to think differently about what this king might be like. The text tells us that when they got to the locality of Israel, they headed towards the provincial capital, Jerusalem. They assumed that was where the king of the Jews would be. They went to the king, to Herod. He knew nothing about it, felt jealous and threatened by their news. Perhaps they pondered, the star was pointing us slightly south. We thought he'd be in a palace, but maybe we were wrong. Did they go back to the place they were staying that night and re-examine their star charts, realize that they had got it wrong and that they needed to go just a day's travel south to Bethlehem? When they got there, what did they really think when they arrived? Melchior bringing in his gift of gold, Balthazar bringing in his gift of frankincense, Caspar walking in the door and seeing a young mother with her child and seeing a father in a humble house in Bethlehem, and he's bringing embalming myrrh. As he gave the gift to Mary and Joseph, could he see the look on her face? The pondering that was going on in her heart, and what kind of strange gift this was. Had he got it right? Was she anticipating grief also? I tell you, I bet none of them thought that they were going to be in a humble house in a small town outside of the main city capital. I expect that the destination that they reached was not what they were expecting. And after they left and had their dream and decided not to go back to Herod, but to leave by another route, perhaps traveling further to the south and around so they avoided Jerusalem, I wonder what their conversations were like on the way back. That wasn't what I expected. That didn't look like a king. That house was nothing like a palace. How did that young child in that small family deserve a star rising in the east? Did we get that wrong? Is that what we were expecting? I wonder, as they traveled back, talked again in camps at night or in inns, I wonder whether the encounter with that child started working on their values, on their sense of the way the world should be, on their idea of wealth or worship or grief. I wonder what it was like years later, after they got home and were ruling again in their own cities, dispensing their wisdom, making decisions, governing, overseeing. I wonder if that trip, that journey, those conversations, that disappointing destination, that child, I wonder if he haunted every decision they made. I wonder if that memory of that moment affected their governing, affected the wisdom they dispensed. I wonder if it had got under their skin and reshaped them. I wonder if it made them more compassionate, patient, perhaps sometimes more determined, perhaps sometimes more committed to issues of justice than they ever had been before, because they saw his poverty and they understood divine royalty in a new light. I wonder if the kings lived lives that were radically different because of their journey and their unexpected destination. And I wonder about you. I wonder about me. I wonder if I'm really enjoying the journey I'm on. I wonder if you're really enjoying the journey you're on. I wonder if you're really exploring your values, your life. I wonder if you are looking for light in unexpected places, for moments of deep joy as you travel the journey of life. I wonder when you reach the destinations that you're heading to, if they are disappointing or different than you expected, whether you might still open yourself to the possibility that that's exactly where you need to be. And as you continue to reflect on life's journey, the conversations you've had along the way, the moments of light you've experienced, and also the various places where you've stopped for a while, I wonder if you let those ideas shape you, mold you, transform you, change you. I wonder if you can look back at things that weren't as you expected them to be and recognize them to be exactly what you needed, and recognize them to be that transforming thing that has shaped your life. I hope one of those memories will relate to the Christ child. I hope that the story of this infant announced by a star and visited by magi has gotten under your skin and is working on you and is reshaping your values and making you more compassionate and more patient and more determined and more ready to fight for justice when it's necessary. I wonder. Amen.